Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. First, I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel. So please join their newsletter for anything regarding your health. And to Alexa's Workspace, if you need a meeting, if you need a virtual office, or you just need a boardroom for 1 hour, contact Alexa's Workspace. And for a really cool resource page, in Facebook, join Aventura Moms. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The mother of all showers, of all baby showers.
Yes.
So let's go back a little bit before we even talk about that. You wanted to go on by yourself.
Yes.
Instead of working for others. So you took a risk.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me, what was that like?
So I have a background in corporate events, marketing, and business development. And my last real corporate job was for American Express. I lived in Manhattan. I, at the time, at that point, she was about 6 months old. I was trying to find a way, and this was, of course, pre-COVID, where virtually working was not really a thing, right?
Correct.
So having any semblance of a balance of being with your kids and planning your own schedule and really having that balance as a new mom and a corporate worker was not a thing. And I found it very difficult to be the best at my job and be the best as a mom when I was held to these very strict sort of timelines for work. And so I sort of had this epiphany around the same time that I had an epiphany that I didn't want to stay in New York, frankly, because I'm a born and raised South Floridian. I had this epiphany that I had always really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad had his own surgical practice. My older brother had his own law firm, has his own law firm. And I had really always sort of had that dream for myself to build something for myself. And that moment, I knew was going to be a big risk, because there's that sense that working for someone else gives you, I don't want to say false sense, but to a degree, a false sense of security. You really, right? You start to believe that that regular paycheck that you're getting, that regular sort of schedule that you're on gives you this sense of security. Of course, however, for me, this was a different time. We're talking 2008, 2010-ish. I had already seen what it was like to not have a sense of security, as many people around me were laid off from their jobs during the financial crisis at that time, and especially living in New York. I knew that the only way to really create that security for myself was to build something for myself. And ultimately, I knew that even if I had to work as much or more, and it has much more so been the latter, creating something for myself, right? That
it is not a 9-to-5 job.
Exactly. There's no 9 to 5. There's no beginning and end. It's, but what I put into it is exactly what I get out of it. And so I knew that if I had that mindset going into it, that the opportunity here for me was to surpass, not just financially, but sort of surpass those stringent guidelines around when you would work and not work. So I knew that by creating something for myself, I didn't necessarily find that balance, if I'm being honest. And I'm not sure that I have that balance now, but I do have the ability for the most part to shut off and shut on for the benefit of both my business and for my children, and create that flexible environment so that I could be focused on my work and focused on my family at different points of the day, and give everything to each of those areas that they deserve. My clients, they deserve me. Exactly. That level of independence was very, very important to me, in order to be the best mom I could be, and also to be the best business owner I could be. I also grew up with this mentality. And it's funny because I really got this advice before I started the job at American Express. I was sort of warned before I went into that environment that the person who worked there before me worked 24/7 and was working for this big corporation, right? But she was working 24/7 running these events. And I remember saying to my dad, I don't know if that's what I want. I want to have children. I want to do this. I was in my late 20s. I knew what I wanted for my life personally in the years ahead. And he said, you know, Amy, it's not about, you know, anything other than efficiency. So you need to learn how to become more efficient. How do you know how efficient she was? Something that took her 4 hours maybe could take you an hour or two. You don't know until you're there. And I always kept that mindset with me going into creating my own business. It's not, you know, sort of the quantity of hours, it's the quality that you're putting into these things. Right. And so it was a very big risk for me at the time to create something of my own. But I felt that the rewards would outweigh those risks for me. And look, truth be told, and I think now women more so should even think about this, that you can always go back. That's the reality.
According to the World Economic Forum,
yep,
during 2021, women entrepreneurs, women going on their own and founding their own business, increased by 49% from 28% in 2019.
That makes me very happy. That means other women.
That was only because of the pandemic. So
that's right.
We're not even factoring the other part. So after the pandemic,
I say to women now how lucky they are in some ways. You know, look, it's difficult in other ways. The world has gotten significantly more expensive than things were before, right? We joke around about how expensive just going to the grocery store is. That was different than when I started this 12 years ago even. But I do think that COVID did open the doors for that flexibility and creating that level of independence. And if you are staying within a company versus maybe you don't have some grand business idea, or maybe your passion isn't working for yourself, maybe it's working at that level because it's comfortable and it does give you that flexibility, or maybe it's working towards some higher position within your company. I think that it's super important to find that place that is going to support creating that sense of flexibility. And I do think COVID has made that possible, because that was not possible before. When we weren't working from home before, we couldn't apply for jobs that were in California when we're based in Florida. Now, and it benefits the companies too. Now their candidate pool is significantly greater because they finally accepted that we can still be efficient working from home. We can still be efficient being moms and not working between the hours of such and such and such and such because we have to do feedings or we need to pick up from school or whatever the case may be. That it is really about efficiency and getting the job done, and trusting that we're capable of doing that on our own terms to some degree.
I think after COVID, women valued more their time. Mm-hmm. I think that's what really happened. So if they were putting on the hours for somebody else, they went into taking the risk and doing it for themselves. And now, like you said, not everybody has a bright idea. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. Like right. I know a lot of people that just want the security of a paycheck.
Absolutely.
And I just want from 9 to 5. I don't want to worry of who's gonna pay the rent the next month.
Absolutely.
So for those people, you're totally right. But now women value their time, and they're going to their bosses and their companies like, this is what I want. I want my time. I want to work from home. I want this. And if you're responsible and if you can prove that you're doing your job, why not?
And I will say this, and I'm not saying this and I don't mean for it to come off in a callous way, because I know it's easier for me to say this now at this point in my business growth. But if you're working for a company that isn't offering you that kind of flexibility and or balance or whatever the case may be, then I would encourage you to go see what else is out there, because especially if you're someone who's been in your career, 10, 15, 20 years, you owe that to yourself. And most companies now are offering that. That's really become a benefit now, but ultimately it's going to become a way of life. And if your company isn't there with that yet, they're kind of behind the times, and you deserve that for yourself, because we have one life. So when you look back, when I talk to a lot of women now who are 10 years older than me, who worked in all types of positions and are now regretting that they didn't ask for more, that they didn't say what they needed. They were afraid to lose their jobs. We're in a totally different time now, asking for those kinds of, shifting hours, working part-time, leaving early, working earlier. It's not about a laziness. It's not about not willing to put in the effort. It's just about trying to find that semblance of balance in life, which ultimately will make you a productive worker and also a more productive parent on both ends. So it ultimately benefits everybody and also just a happier person. Mental health plays a piece in all of this too. So
now we're creating awareness of the importance of mental health.
That's right.
And
so I think companies, and I would encourage people too, with that said, to, if you are sort of in that phase where you're trying to decide what you want to do next after you've had a baby, or while you're currently pregnant, and figuring out if that company is going to be the right place for you long term, whether you're thinking about going off on your own or whether you're thinking about sort of what your career potential is, to think about those smaller businesses like Moabs, like what we're doing, are the ones that are going to understand and support the position that you're in. But like you said, I think that COVID has definitely opened the door to those kinds of conversations about treating people not as simply like robotic workers, but as human beings. And as a human being, you have to factor in, you don't have to hear about people's personal lives every day, but you have to think of them as a whole human being who does have a family, who does have other responsibilities outside of the business. And I think when businesses care about those things, that they end up creating much happier, healthier employees who give them more in the short run and the long run.
I think the best example is the companies now that they now created nursing stations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
For new moms, because if they can know that they can pump some milk or take their baby to work or something in that sense, they're going to be happier.
100%.
Before going to a restroom and just sitting on a stall. Like now they're understanding.
Oh yeah, I think we've come a long way. I still think we have a long way to go. When you look at us compared to other countries in this world, we have a ways to go. Everything is a trade-off of sorts, but I will always, encourage people, I will always encourage women, especially, to take the risk. Now you have to mitigate your risk. So when I say take a risk, look, for me, working more on what I'd call the sort of, my business has a B2B element and a B2C element, both sides of it, right? We're trying to get attendees to come and have an amazing adults only night out for all things pregnancy and parenting. And we're trying to get brands involved who want to showcase their products and services through a variety of ways, namely the events itself around the country, to this audience of expectant new parents.
I didn't go back a little bit because nobody knows what the mother of a baby shower is.
So, and I'll tell you guys all about it. Yeah. So essentially, when I created this business 12 years ago, I saw this void in our country, but at the time I was living on the west coast of Florida in Tampa. I just moved from New York. My brother's an attorney. Both my brothers were attorneys there at the time. And I was sort of working part-time for American Express as kind of a contract employee. And it was not fulfilling. I had sort of taken a big pay cut, a big cut in position to, be at home with my first child at that point. And I just didn't feel fulfilled. And as I was going around the community, I was realizing that there wasn't like one central resource to help you find mommy and me classes or the best stroller that you wanted. Everything was just sort of disjointed. Additionally, I didn't really know how to meet people. I come off as an extrovert. I am a bit of an extrovert, but as a new mom, my first child, I was not feeling confident. I didn't grow up in that area. I didn't know how to find the various connections or that village that people talk about. And I started meeting moms and sort of saying, like, are you feeling that same sense of disjointness, so to speak? And people were saying yes. And I thought to myself, what if I could create a program, which is my email, Small Fry Society? What if I could create a program that connects expectant new parents to each other and also brings resources to educate us in what I call these socials? And I had this 6-week program where you could come and learn about all kinds of different resources locally and nationally, and talk about things like car seat safety, and talk about things like feeding, and also make friends. what happened was that program grew very quickly. We got some good press locally. And we started getting a lot of emails from moms and dads saying, you know, I can't come to your weekly socials, but if you ever had like a one-off event that I could come to, you know, I'm working or I have other play groups or whatever the case may be. If you ever did something one-off, I would love to be part of that. And then this sort of second light bulb went off and I thought, well, I used to do events for 15, 20,000 people. And granted, it was very different, right? In corporate America.
Do an event for me.
Yes, I would love it. And so then I had this epiphany, like, why wouldn't I do an event that would bring together amazing national, local resources and connect these expectant new parents to other people in a very non-judgmental, fun atmosphere? I was taking my daughter to things, who was like 6 months to a year old when I was building Moabs. And at the time it was Small Fry Society. I was taking her to things, and I'll be honest, she's the easiest of my 3 kids then and now as a 12-year-old. But no matter where I took her to, the emphasis was always on her. It was always on, I got to make sure she's fed snacks. I got to make sure that she's entertaining. I couldn't seem to focus in on the education. I couldn't seem to focus on really meeting people because I was attending to her, as you should be as a mom when you're bringing your child somewhere. But again, this light bulb went off and I thought, if I'm going to do this event, I'm doing it as adults only. Invest the time and energy into yourself. This is going to be adults only. It's not going to be for everybody. There are going to be people who are very attached to their kids, and this event is not going to be for them. But I can tell you, 12 years later, with the exception of the 2 years we couldn't do events because of COVID, now I never get emails from people saying, why can I bring my child? Now, if they want to wear their baby, of course, but like there's no strollers, there's no toddlers running around, there's none of that. This focus is on expectant new parents, learning, laughing, and leaving with confidence is what we say. And it's in a very non-judgmental, open-minded atmosphere, but done in a very curated fashion. So we're bringing brands that are tried and true, tested brands that we've worked with now for 10 plus years. And we're putting them in front of these attendees to try to make their life easier. And now, who would have known, here we are in 2023, and our biggest baby retailer and biggest registry company, Bye Bye Baby, is now bankrupt. So you don't even have that option now, right? So we try to now, more so than ever, we're valuable to these attendees and also to these brands, that we can connect these people together with resources in a non-overwhelming atmosphere that is really about celebrating them, but really educating and empowering them. And that's the basis of Moabs.
So where do you sell the products there at your event? So
most of the products there, you can, I think that's the direction some of these brands will move in. Historically, they've come there to educate on the different products and services that they offer. Now that we're seeing this shift in retail options, I think more and more so these brands will start selling and there'll be deals. There's always been a semblance of selling at these events, but we leave it up to the brands. Now, I think with Bye Bye Baby gone, yes, I think we'll see more of these brands wanting to take advantage of the selling opportunity. They can.
So where do you do this event?
We do these events all over the country. We've done the event in 19 cities across the US since 2012. The first event started in Tampa. We do this event this year in 3 cities in Florida. We just had the Orlando event on May 12th. We're also going to do this event in Pittsburgh on July 26th. We're doing the event in South Florida in September, which we do it in Broward County. We also are doing the event in Salt Lake City, where my partner lives, in October, early October. And then we'll wrap up the year in Tampa in November. Each year the cities change. And there's a number of reasons why they change, but I'm a born and raised Floridian. So selfishly, you could say I do most of my events here in Florida. And you know that those markets, Orlando, Tampa, and South Florida, are very different. So the brands tend to be different in each of those cities. And attendees are different.
I wouldn't have thought that the brands would be different. I would have thought that the brands would follow you regardless of where you do the events.
No, sometimes it depends on their schedule, and sometimes it depends on what their target areas are of the country are. So some of the brands will always come to Tampa because that works for them. And some of the brands will come to all 5 events. And we've had years, the most events we ever did in 1 year was 8 in 1 year. That was 2018. And we had some brands that did all of them, but we do have some brands that are like, look, I'm not going to come to Florida 3 times this year. Which one should we come to? And I'll try to help them figure it out based on schedule or based on what I know about those cities, because it's different clientele in each of those cities.
I could imagine. And there's also the do you segment it by, for example, culture? Like, do you advertise based on the Hispanic community?
In South Florida, 100%, yes. And I'm embarrassed to say that even though I took Spanish for probably like 8 years, Español un poquito, más o menos. But we have
to cater to the Hispanic in South Florida.
100%. And also I would say that for Orlando as well. Tampa, not so much. Tampa is, I think it's becoming more diverse in Tampa. It's been a big buildup in that city over the last 10 years. And I definitely think because of COVID, there's been an influx of different cultures moving there. Tampa tends to be more Midwestern people who flock there and people who are from Tampa or move there for jobs. It's less diverse than the other two places, but 100%, a lot of South Americans live in Orlando. And obviously we've got people from all over in our melting pot in South Florida. So yes, much more so in South Florida. Mm-hmm.
I imagine that there's a complete population in Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City is exactly what you would imagine. It's a very interesting market for us because it's a highly Mormon population there. It's also a really interesting market because it's a very influencer packed market. There are a lot of some of the biggest and most well-known mom influencers are based in Salt Lake City. There's actually a lot of baby brands that are also based in Salt Lake City as well. So that event is going to be slightly different for us because we're going to have an influencer aspect to it that's only open to influencers, and then something else that's open to the general public and will be a different format. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by influencers, Mom?
When we say influencer, we mean those people you think of on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram for the most part, who have obviously a certain following of, engaged followers and a quantity of followers who are influencing on variety of things in the maternity, juvenile, baby, parenting spaces. And Salt Lake City is the mecca of mom influencers. It is the mecca. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We have a lot of great influence. To be honest, yes, it's very interesting. And my partner, who used to be based in Pittsburgh, which is how we ended up in Pittsburgh like 6 years ago, she recently moved to Salt Lake City, and she's educated me on this, but I've known that for a long time. There was a big documentary, there's been podcasts done about the mom influencer community, and so many of them being based in Salt Lake City. And it's really very fascinating. And so we decided to mix that event up a little different. Any reason why? I don't really know that answer. No, I mean, I don't know, but it is what it is. And we're going to do the format a little bit differently for those people because it's a whole different opportunity for the brands that are involved when they're reaching people who have, really big followings. But, look, we're not doing too shabby in Florida either with influencers. I mean, one of my prominent speakers, my sort of lead speaker on all things sort of what we call parenthood for real, is based in South Florida, Rachel Sobel. Her handle is @Wine and Cheez-Its. And she has a really cool, unique perspective on parenting. She is divorced. She has 2 kids far apart in age, teenager, 6-year-old, remarried. And like I always say, Rachel should have been a therapist. She is so bright and such a seasoned parent, and really gives the real deal scoop on everyday parenting. She's like an award-winning writer and speaker, and she really speaks at all of our events. And frankly, she could be a stand-up comedian. She's hilarious and genuine. And I mean, I think she's got 130,000 followers on Instagram. Well, not correct, but it's not all about the number of the people that you have as followers. It's actually right. And I will say this, she has a very engaged, quality audience. And part of the reason for that is that she doesn't sell herself, meaning there are influencers who make a living, and that's not a knock on them. I think that's pretty freaking cool. We're living in a time where you can make a living
by just recommending something. Right.
Like selling comfy pajamas and food delivery. There's a million other companies who are spending money on influencer marketing. But she is very choosy about the brands that she works with. And so there's not a lot of advertising. Her social media following is really based on sort of the content that she provides about parenting experiences. So yeah, it's an interesting time. So when we talk about like, to kind of shift it back, like when we talk about, taking a risk and becoming entrepreneurial and sort of women business empowerment, it's a different time now. It doesn't have to look like starting XYZ business. It could be any number of things. It could be being a great writer. It could be being a great business person. It could be following some passion that you didn't even think before that you could make a living on. And maybe you won't make a living that first month, that first year, that whatever it is. But if you're
the risk.
But that's the risk. And you have to believe in
risk.
yourself. And you have to not only believe in yourself, but you have to surround yourself with other people who believe in you and support you. And it's a team effort. Look, it's a team effort, I think, when you're building a business and finding the people who have the expertise and some semblance of the passion that you have about that business, who are willing to take that risk with you. I mean, I started a business and I had to do things that I had to teach myself because I didn't have the money to pay someone to build a website 12 years ago, right? But then I knew as soon as I was at a point where I had money coming in, that I knew which areas I was going to put that money back into. And it really didn't go into my pocket for those first 2 years. It went back into getting the people paid that were going to add value to my business. So you have to be practical.
Saying the whole thing on
Yes.
where you put the money that was coming in.
When you're starting that business, you have to go into it with a sort of micro view and a macro view of where you want this to go, and be realistic about how much you're going to spend in order to surround yourself with the people who are going to help you grow. And look, the risk depends on what the business is and how much money you have to spend on something. But I didn't have someone giving me money. I made money on Small Fry Society, that 6-week program. And as soon as I had enough money to produce the bigger event, Mother of All Baby Showers or Moabs, then I took that on. But that, that was a buildup of 6 to 9 months before I knew I was going to have enough money to pay expenses and all that. But, and all these years later, listen, COVID was very, very hard, because you do events, right? So we not only suffered from not doing events during those years and lost revenue, but we suffered because coming back now, the cost to produce events is 30 to 40% higher. However, the brand partners, or like sponsors, like you mentioned at the beginning of this, they're not necessarily in a position to pay any more than they would have prior to those years. And some don't have any money. So now
because they also were suffering.
Yes. So we're still, I would be lying if I said to anybody that we're still in a build-up phase. We're still in a very much so a survival phase 2 years later. Mm-hmm.
Well, I say it in a different way. The way I say it is that I'm starting all over again.
I can tell you, I just came back from my Orlando event where we had a very difficult time finding staff because people still don't necessarily want to work. And I am
it's not that they don't want to work, is that they had to find other jobs.
I think it's a little bit of both. At least for me, the people that would work our events the day of, a lot of young people are not necessarily feeling like they are in a position where they want to work or want to work for that amount, which I was a kid once.
That's the other part, that they increase their prices a lot.
But so I was working at a pace. I'm 11 years older than when I did that first event, and it was my most physical event. So what you're saying about starting over, it very much resembled what it felt like 11 years ago. However, I am a glass half full person, and I will say that was a humbling experience. And it reminded me just how physical and demanding events really are. And I don't take it for granted that I am in a position financially where I can pay people to do a lot of those more physical things so that I can focus on some of the sort of macro higher level things I need to focus on in those events. It was humbling for me.
But if you can't, you need to do it. And in order to make an event happen, make it happen.
And I think that's what I would say to people too, is that, you have to surround yourself with a team, right? And so, but you have to understand if you're going to start your own business, that at the end of the day, everything really does fall upon you.
And your team is 100% of what you do. Like you cannot do it. You can be an entrepreneur, but you really need a team to support you.
Yes, they will look
at events, but your whole business.
That's exactly right. On a day-to-day basis. And over the last 11 years, that's the other thing too, is that when you start a business, you go into it with a mindset of, or a plan in your head of, this is what this is going to look like. And this is how it, right? And that flies out the window.
One thing is to put it on paper and the other is reality.
Change is inevitable. Accepting that things will change and that you need to roll with the changes makes life a lot easier to cope with. And we can all say that personally and professionally at this point.
No, and the other part is that it's the ability to move.
Yes.
To move through things that don't work. I call them plan A, B, C.
100%.
A for events, you need to have plan A, B, C, D. I've gotten to the point where I've had to go to plan C.
Especially now. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure talking to you, and to everyone who's expecting, just stay tuned. Where can they see where's the next event?
If anyone ever has questions about attending events, needs help in finding resources locally or nationally, wants some kind of guidance, we're very active on social media every single day. So you can find us at @the_Moabs, MOABS on Instagram. You can find us at the Mother of All Baby Showers for Facebook. And you can find us at our website, themotherofallbabyshowers.com. You can always type into Google Mother of All Baby Showers or Moabs. I'm sure we'll come right up. And we're always here. And we would love to see anyone who's expecting or a new parent come and meet us. If I'm there, come say hi to Amy.
Thank you so much. And everybody, until next week, and above all, stay safe. Have a wonderful day.